A reading and reflection for the second Sunday after Trinity. And our reading is taken today from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 10, verses 24 to 33. A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher, and the slave like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground unperceived by your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. So do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I also will deny before my Father in heaven. And so just a few thoughts about that reading. It's not a particularly comfortable reading, deliberately so. Jesus is speaking to his disciples, and in the previous chapter, he has sent those disciples out into the world and has told them to proclaim the good news. But then in the following chapter, he's saying to them, these are all the things you should expect by going out into the world and spreading the good news. Persecution, misunderstanding, suffering, the disciples picking up their cross and following him. And so he's following on from this, Jesus, by talking about bringing to light those things that God has told them in the dark, to speak truth to power, to stand up, to be counted, and to not fear. We're in a pretty different context where we are today, but the bit that I kind of want to focus on really is that idea, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. And I think that's a really striking image of God talking in the darkness, and then those disciples going out to speak that truth into the light. And darkness is not often a comfortable place. I don't know about you, but during this lockdown time, the darkness has felt particularly hard. Last night, like many nights, I woke up when it was still dark and had those thoughts swirling through my head. The darkness isn't always a place, I assume, where I'm hearing God's voice. Sometimes, actually, there's a clamouring of lots of voices, and it's hard to pick out, where is that voice of God? Where is that truth? Where is that wisdom that I want to bring into the light? I went on an online course for people in the church who were exercising some kind of leadership. And as part of the course, they asked us all to look at a series of words and to tick the one which we felt was most relevant to us. And the words varied from kind of tired to excited, struggling to energised. And the word I ticked was actually one that most people ticked, which was inadequate. Because it's hard to feel adequate in this situation. But somehow bringing that to light and recognising that other people were feeling the same way was incredibly liberating. That idea of bringing what is in darkness to light and just being able to speak about it truthfully. I feel like that has happened quite a lot in a kind of wider context at the moment. We just need to think about the Black Lives Matter campaign and people who are speaking their deep, dark truths. People who have suffered at the hands of racism and are telling their story. It's not always comfortable to hear, but there's something about bringing to light what has been in the darkness. And so how to hear what is God's voice and what is our voice, or the voice of others. That's the challenge, and that's the harder thing to do. I don't really think the voice of God is telling me I'm inadequate, or would be telling you that you're inadequate, or however you feel during this time, whatever word you would have chosen. But at 3:00 in the morning, it's hard. It's hard to know sometimes where is God's voice and where is my own. And that's where discernment comes in. And there is no easy answer for discernment, but one thing, one way, is simply to come before God and to pray. There's a way called the examen, which typically is practiced at the end of the day, and you don't need to spend long, but reflect on the day and pray for God to reveal those moments where God was really close, those moments where you felt thankful for. Might not even always be the things that you expected. But I think that's one way where we can begin to hear God's voice and to pick out what is our own and what is God's. And God's voice is not a judgmental one. God's voice is not one of anger. God's voice might be prompting us to change, but it's always, in my experience anyway, been something that has been a gentle, comforting voice of love. Something, excuse the cat, which shows us light and love and hope. And when we hear that voice in the dark places in ourselves, that is what we want to bring to light and to share with others around us. to stand on the rooftops and proclaim. But it does take wisdom, and it does take courage, and it does take sometimes stopping and being still, letting God be God, and trusting in God's goodness. Amen.